Hey everyone, in today's video, I want to talk a little bit about the writing rope. Now, if you are familiar with the science of reading, then I'm sure you've heard of Scarborough's reading rope, where we have, word recognition skills and language comprehension skills, and within each one, all those skills are kind of woven together to make the reading rope. And the reading rope means that as we teach each of those skills and they become more and more proficient, as students become more and more proficient, they become proficient skilled readers. Now, Joan Sedita, who actually lives up here in Massachusetts, only a few miles down the road, has done some amazing work with students with dyslexia, and in 2019 she coined what we call the writing rope, where she has talked about 5 different strands of writing that, just like the reading rope, we need to teach different skills within each strand to make proficient writers. So in today's video, I just wanted to do a brief overview of all 5 strands and some general things that us as K-2 teachers can do to help students become proficient in writing. If you are ready to learn more and dive into this video, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and let's get started. Before I introduce the writing rope in each strand, I do want to offer up this resource. This is the Writing Rope book by Joan Sedita, where she does go into so much detail about each of the different strands, some foundational writing skills. I will link this down in the description below in case you want to check it out. Great resource. So I wanted to point this out to you before we dive into this video all about the writing rope. All right, here is the image of the writing rope by Joan Sedita, and you can see that to get skilled writing, here are the 5 strands that she has pointed out. We have critical thinking, that's that purple strand. We have syntax, the red strand. Text structure, the blue strand. Writing craft, which is the green strand, and transcription, which is our orange strand. Now, the colors don't mean anything. I was just pointing out what color they were, but I just want to make that clear in case there are any questions. Now, we are going to go into each of those 5 strands. Because this is an overview video and I don't want this to be an hour-long video, or a 2-hour-long video, it could go on for a long time. This will just be the basics of each one with some simple ideas and really what we should be focusing on as K-2 teachers in the classroom. If within any of these strands that I talk about you want to learn more, please let me know down in the comments. I could actually take each strand and make its own video with more specific ideas and activities, but I'll leave that up to you. So as I go on, make sure to leave comments down in the description letting me know what you want to learn more about. I'm gonna go from the top of the writing rope to the bottom. These aren't in particular order of which you need to teach them in because all 5 strands really need to be taught in order for students to be proficient writers, but I'm just gonna go from the top down to the bottom to explain them to you. So the first one we have is critical thinking. And under the critical thinking strand, we have generating ideas and gathering information, as well as teaching about that writing process, organizing, drafting, writing, and revising. Now in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, it's going to be really important that we teach our students to brainstorm ideas and let them know that they have a bunch to write about. They actually have plenty of ideas that they can share with others. And this is important to instill in them so that they know, we are writers, they can do this. And then when talking about the writing process, Joan Sedita breaks it into 4 different categories. She has them listed as think, plan, write, and revise. And when we are looking at the 4 of these, the writing and revision part, write and revise, are usually the hardest in our K-2 classrooms. The idea of the writing process has been around for a long time. Those are Joan Sedita's 4 steps, how she categorizes them. In a K-2 classroom, I actually have them slightly differently. Over in the SJT Writing Club, I actually have 5 different posters that I use with students when teaching them the writing process, and mine look like this. We have think, which is of course our brainstorming. It says, I can think of an idea to share. And then for planning, I also include the word say. So I have plan and say. I can take my idea and plan what I want to share. And the reason I do that is in the K-2 classroom, oral language is so important. We know our students have all these ideas up in their brain, but again, that writing, that transcribing part is going to be the hardest for them as they are learning how to write all these different things. Not only how to write a sentence, not only how to, use punctuation, mechanics, grammar correctly, but also just writing down the physical words is very difficult. So I do want to make sure my students are orally able to explain their ideas even before they write them down on paper. For our next step, we have draw and write. And again, you can see that I added drawing in here. I can write and draw my ideas on paper. Again, I did this because in a K-2 classroom, drawing is such an important part of their writing process. Next, we have edit and revise. I added edit again in there just because at these basic levels, we are very much focusing on having correct punctuation and capitalization, and also going back into our story and adding more. And then I added one more poster here, which is share. In my K-2 classroom, I always found it really important that we understand that we aren't always writing for ourselves, we're writing for an audience, and then we can also praise one another's work and really celebrate as a writing community when we share our work. So those 5 posters, I believe, are in the bonus section of the SJT Writing Club, but I actually went ahead and made them a freebie for you if you're watching this video. So if you'd like to get your hands on those posters, I linked them down in the description. Now, while those posters themselves are great and you do want to teach students what the writing process is and refer to it, you also want to explicitly teach them how to complete each of those steps. So within the SJT Writing Club, within each unit, each genre unit that I have, day 1 and day 2 pretty much look the same. Day 1, if I'm talking about my how-to unit, if we're teaching students how to write how-to informative pieces, day 1 is always going to be, what is this genre all about, right? So we will have a little introduction. Here we have an anchor chart, and we'll probably read a mentor text just explaining what how-to writing really is. On day 2, we have our brainstorming, our thinking step. We need to think, wait, I know how to do a lot of things. Let's brainstorm this together. Here's an example of a brainstorming sheet I would use with my students. And again, I would explicitly teach them how to complete this. I would model some examples that I know how to do. I would ask for student feedback before I sent them off to do this on their own. Depending on the grade level and the time of year, we might even fill this out together as a class for your students to refer back to. After we brainstorm, we move to that planning step. Now that planning process is going to look different depending on the type of writing. If you're teaching students how to write a narrative, you will focus on a beginning, a middle, and an end for them to plan. If you are focusing on an informative text, maybe you have a main idea with some details. If we're doing a how-to, I'm going to have a main idea sentence, I know how to do this, or I'm going to explain how to do this, and then, the procedural steps students should take, possibly with a closing. It'll depend on what type of genre your students are writing, but you'll definitely want a planning sheet for students to follow so they can see how this type of writing is formed. The writing stage is self-explanatory. They will take that planning sheet and they will turn it into writing. They will go ahead and cross-check and make sure that they kind of followed the structure they were supposed to as they wrote it down. And then for editing and revising in a K-2 classroom, I love to use a checklist. Now, I create a different checklist for each unit of writing that I teach my students because I teach different lessons. But here's an example again from that how-to unit where before we publish, we need to go through and make sure that we've done all of these things. Do I have a clear and colorful cover page? Do my steps go in order and make sense? Did my steps use transition words? Do my illustrations have labels and/or captions? Did I go through my editing checklist? And then if I've done all those things, we go to the bottom where I make sure that we have detailed, colorful illustrations and that my handwriting is the neatest I can make it. So again, when thinking about what I'm going to add to that revision checklist, I really have to think about the lessons that I am teaching. Mine, of course, go along with the lessons in the SJT Writing Club, so I just took those and added them to the checklist. And again, there's a different one for each genre. Now you can see that on that revision checklist, editing was a part of it, so they do have to go through and edit their work as well. If you are looking for a simple editing checklist, I have this cups one for free right here. I shared this in a recent video, but I will also go ahead and link it down in the description. All right, let's move on to strand number 2, which is going to be syntax. As you can see here, under the syntax strand, we have grammar and syntactic awareness, we have sentence elaboration, and we have punctuation. Now, syntactic awareness and grammar and different, mechanics and sentence structures are going to be very different in kindergarten than they're going to be in 6th grade, right? Those are going to grow and expand. At the K-2 level, this is really what we're focused on here. We need our students to understand what a sentence is. We need them to be able to write a complete sentence. They need to learn about different sentence types, and they need to be able to expand sentences into what I call super sentences. And when thinking about expanding sentences and different sentence types, that's where students can really kind of focus on creating longer sentences, different punctuation, things like that. Now, in terms of how to write a complete sentence and expanding those sentences to make them a little more detailed, I have an entire sentence writing unit over on TPT. It looks like this right here. It's also included in the SJT Writing Club in case you are a member, and I have a whole video about this subject right here. So I'm not gonna go super in depth about it. If you do wanna learn more about how to teach sentence writing, I suggest watching that video. And again, if you need a resource, this is the one for you. I'll link both of those down in the description. Now, in terms of syntax and some sentence elaboration, there are a few things I like to do with my class. After I've taught them whole group, I like to put them in writing centers for them to practice. As well as, of course, we go over it and discuss it when we are doing our writing genre-based units as well. The first one is going to be sentence combinations. And with these, I actually like to give my students the conjunction we might be learning about. So it might be and, it might be but, it might be so. And we're gonna have to combine two separate sentences to make one. Again, this is something I would absolutely teach whole group first, practice together, model doing properly, and then you can have students continue this on their own as needed. But it really helps students kind of develop an ear for what those sentences should sound like before they practicing writing them themselves. And another activity I love specifically for syntax are going to be sentence scrambles, where students have to take a sentence that has been all scrambled up and they need to go ahead and put it in order so that it makes sense. I actually recently came out with an entire product, these decodable sentence scrambles. There's over 300 different pages there, and they kind of walk through a phonics scope and sequence. I did that, again, you want to teach this whole group first, but then I made them decodable so students could take them and do them independently so they can actually read the words themselves, put them together, rewrite the sentence. So in K through 2, we are working at that sentence level. Strand number 3 is going to be text structure. And under this, we have the 3 different types of writing and their structures: narrative, informational, and opinion. We have paragraph structure. We have patterns of organization like description, sequence, cause, effect, compare, contrast, and problem and solution. And then we have linking and transition words. Now at the K through 2 level, a lot of that patterns of organization of different writing isn't really going to apply in your classroom just yet. But we definitely teach about the 3 different types of writing and how they differ from one another. In fact, in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade, we do want our students to be able to produce a type of writing within each of those genres. We also teach some beginning transition words in K through 2, and in 2nd grade, you can start to focus on that paragraph structure. Now, just like with the last strand and teaching all about sentences, I do have a product teaching your 2nd grade and 3rd grade students how to write a paragraph. That's going to be up here. That unit walks through how to teach paragraph writing, and it does it within each genre. We know that a narrative paragraph is going to sound slightly different than an informative one, and an informative paragraph is going to sound different than an opinion paragraph, but they kind of have the same basic layout. So that unit right there helps with paragraph writing, and if you need more information, I have a whole video on how to teach paragraph writing right here. Again, I will link both of those down in the description, but that is mostly going to be a 2nd grade skill. Some tips when we are teaching all 3 genres is we really want to explicitly introduce what each genre is to our students. I showed you an example earlier when I was teaching how-to writing, so they could see an anchor chart. We read a mentor text so they could hear and kind of identify different things that make a story a how-to story. We do this a lot in K1 when we're thinking about fiction versus nonfiction, but we can actually go even further and really have students identify what makes a story a narrative, what makes it informational, and then what makes something an opinion piece. And then of course in 1st grade, those beginning linking and transition words are really going to come into play within our stories. So we do want to teach our students why transition words are important, what ones we can use in what places, which ones make sense, and so on. All right, strand number 4 is going to be writing craft. And within writing craft, we have word choice, awareness of task, awareness of audience, and the purpose. And we also have literary devices. Now, in first reading through each of those skills, it definitely sounds like it's geared mostly towards upper elementary, and most of it is going to be, but in the K through 2 world, there are a few things we can do. First, with awareness of task, just like in the last strand, we do want our students to really understand what type of writing they will be creating, because we want our students to know that if we are writing a narrative story, this is what it's going to sound like, right? By explicitly teaching each of those different genres, now our students have an understanding of the task at hand. They understand what they need to write. Also, through your modeling, they understand what that should look like. They might know in kindergarten, we might expect 1 or 2 sentences for our narrative story. In 1st grade, we might expect, a 2 to 3 page booklet where there's like a sentence or two on each page with a clear idea that makes sense and also has an ending. In second grade, it's going to look a little bit different. That awareness of task also needs to come from you. You want to make sure that you model explicitly and clearly what you expect of your students. Now, also under this strand, we have literary devices. Now, we have some more advanced ones like flashbacks, using hyperbole, allegory. These are things we are not really going to touch upon at the K-2 level. Some of you kindergarten teachers are watching me right now and you're like, I need them to write a sentence. I can't think about, hyperbole at this point in time, and you don't have to. So while there are many literary devices that are geared towards upper elementary, there are definitely a few we can try out in a K-2 classroom. For example, I like to teach my students about dialogue. Now, I like to do this using a mentor text, or maybe there are some speech bubbles. And it's really great even just during a read aloud before your writing time to kind of talk about what those speech bubbles mean. Why are they there? Why did the author and illustrator choose to put them there? How do they help us as the reader understand what's going on? And then I like to model using those in my own writing. Now, this isn't something I would spend a ton of time on, but it is fun for students to try to explore and use this new device we're learning about. So I would introduce it in my modeled writing, and I might, let's pretend we're teaching personal narratives and I'm writing a little story here in front of the class, and I might say, oh, remember we read that book earlier and they had some speech bubbles? I want to try adding that to my characters in my story. And then I would model drawing a little speech bubble with just a few words that the character in the story, whether it's myself or my dad or whatever I'm writing about, right? I would go ahead and add a little speech bubble. And then I would encourage my students to go ahead and try it in their writing. Now, this is likely not going to be on their little rubric that they're checking for. It's just a fun way for students to explore with different things. Another tool I like to teach my K-2 students, and I actually believe it is in the first grade writing standards. If not, it's second grade, but I'm pretty sure it's in first grade. And that's using sensory details. So I do like to, again, using a mentor text, point out some of those sensory details. And I like to teach this during our personal narratives unit, because my students were actually there in the scene. And so whatever's happening, let's pretend we're at the beach, building sandcastles, let's pretend that's what I'm writing about. And I would have my students, close their eyes, and I would model this, as always. And I would say, okay, what did we see when we were at the beach? What could we smell? What could we hear? What could we taste? What could we feel? Because our students are likely familiar with the 5 senses, so this is a good one to teach them. And I try to think of some of those words and how I might add that in to either my illustration or my writing, or both. I like to teach about adding sensory details in a few different genre units, and I like to do so using an anchor chart like this one right here. Let's use our 5 senses to add details to our text. I actually have this anchor chart in a freebie that I created a few years ago about adding more details to our writing, so I'll go ahead and link that freebie down below. It has a bunch of stuff in there. This video, I guess, is all about the freebies, so everything I've mentioned here that I say is a freebie will be linked down below in the description, so make sure you grab them. So while there's not too much to focus on in the 4th strand, our writing craft, we do want to make sure that we can introduce our students to some of those literary devices, have them explore and have fun with it, and also we definitely want to make sure our students are aware of the task at hand. And last but not least, strand number 5 is transcription. And I know there's not a certain order. I said students need to learn all of them, but in K-2, this right here is going to be the most important for our young students. And under transcription, we can see that we have spelling and handwriting. I mentioned earlier in the video when talking about the writing process that the writing part, the actual physical act of writing the words down on paper, is the most difficult for our K-2 students. And that is for so many reasons, largely it being a developmental skill that our students may or may not have learned yet. So we need to make sure that while we are teaching our students that they have tons of ideas to share and what a sentence might look like and all that fun stuff, that we are focusing on spelling and handwriting so our students can actually share those ideas. Now, I have an entire video about handwriting right here. It's a recent video that I came out with maybe 6 months ago or so, so I definitely think you should check that out if you're looking for more skills and different ways to teach handwriting to your youngest students, and also I go into why it's so important. But one of the main reasons it's so important is automaticity. It takes so much work for our youngest students to think about the word that they want to write, break it into the sounds, make sure they know the grapheme, phoneme correspondences, then take out the pencil, hold the pencil correctly, form the letter correctly if they're even making the correct letter, just to write one letter of one word, of one sentence, of one paper on their paper. In kindergarten, handwriting, letter formation, pencil grip, that is going to be a major focus. As we get into first grade, we definitely still want to focus on that letter formation, especially at the beginning of the year, but then hopefully we can kind of trickle off that. In second grade, handwriting should really only need to be taught as needed in small groups, depending on your students. But we know if we are kind of able to lessen that mental load of handwriting for our students by teaching them how to become automatic with it, then it frees up so much more space for generating ideas, for writing complete sentences, and all the other fun things in writing that we want to teach them. So handwriting is super important. Check out that video for more. Now, when it comes to spelling, there's two different types of spelling we talk about with writing. I have talked about inventive spelling and the importance of inventive spelling so many times, and I will die on that hill. During writing, we need to have our students rely on inventive spelling in order to get their ideas out. In K through 2, our students are not going to be able to proficiently spell every single thing they want to yet because they haven't been taught it, and that's okay. Now, that mindset needs to be coupled with the fact that our students need explicit spelling instruction during their phonics block. Now, spelling or encoding is essentially just teaching students how to spell the words that they want to, right? It's taking that word, breaking it into the phonemes, the different sounds, and then knowing what graphemes or letters correspond to each one. And we want to explicitly teach our students how to do just that. And we want to do it in a systematic and sequential way. In fact, I have tons of phonics videos, boom, 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 teaching you how to do just that. And I have a specific encoding one or spelling one in case you want to check it out. Now, this is going to be encoding in the phonics block. If you want a different video that is more about how to teach students what to do about spelling during the writing block, go ahead and let me know down in the comments and I can work on a video for that. So basically, under Strand 5, we need to understand the importance of handwriting and how we explicitly teach it, make sure we are explicitly teaching it, and with the spelling portion, we need to know how to balance our inventive spelling, when we should be using that, and also to make sure that we are teaching explicit spelling. And as our students learn those different phonics skills and they do learn how to spell it, we should expect them to spell it correctly in their writing. All right, so I know that was kind of a bigger video, but I really wanted to dive into the writing rope because as I've progressed on my journey of the science of reading and different structured literacy techniques, writing is really an area I want to focus more on. I have always felt very strongly about writing instruction. I have loved teaching writing, and I still feel pretty strongly with the research that I have now that I've gained in the last few years about the types of writing I was doing, or the types of writing instruction I was giving to my students rather, but I definitely know that now I need to focus more on that handwriting, more on specific sentence structures. I just know there's so much more I could add into it. So as always, as I continue to learn on my teaching journey, I like to share with you as well. There you have an overview of the writing rope by Joan Sedita, the 5 different strands we should really focus on, and kind of what they look like in a K through 2 classroom. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, if there is one specific strand or 2 or 3 that you want to learn more about and you'd like a longer, more detailed video, let me know down in the comments and I'll see if I can make that for you. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up so I know. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and click that bell. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.